Well, happy Friday, everyone. I am Erica Lukes here with Jack Brewer from Expanding Frontiers Research. And tonight we are thrilled to announce the fact that we have started our Patreon page to help fund the nonprofit. And Jack has been working tirelessly behind the scenes to create wonderful content, to put bonus content on there for people that help support a nonprofit, which is tax deductible, by the way. And so we are rolling that out tonight. I want to just take a moment to thank all of my friends who are staying up late, Jim and Peter and all of you. Ken, nice to see you. Mystico, 90, Steve, I love you guys. I know that there are more people listening on Twitter. And William, also Phil. Hey guys, it's always like it makes my Friday to know that I can, have kind of one of those days where things are exciting, and then I can get on and just see like all of my friends. I really appreciate you guys being here, being supportive, and as I always say in every show, you are very respectful, you are very knowledgeable, all of you, and what you contribute in chat is incredibly important to a productive dialogue about a very interesting subject wherever it may go. And so I appreciate your support. We appreciate your support, and thank you very much. So I'm here with my friend and colleague, Jack. Jack and I have been working on Expanding Frontiers research for a little over a year, and we are very proud of the work that we have done. Jack does a lot of different things with grammar requests, FOIA requests, along with website maintenance, building the Patreon page, and doing research. I mean, it's just this. We've worked really hard, and we've had a blast doing it. So I feel very. This has been like the highlight of my time pursuing this topic. So thank you, Jack, for all of your work and for being a great colleague and partner.
Well, thank you. And it's wonderful to be here tonight and to have been involved with you and helping facilitate the ongoing YouTube work that you've been doing as well. And it's really great to me when I hear Erica say that she enjoys Expanding Frontiers so much. That makes it very rewarding to me. And we're going to talk some tonight about the different things we have been working on, some of the records that Barry Greenwood brought and helped us put in the archive, where they came from, what they indicate. We'll be talking about some of that tonight. We'd love for you to join our Patreon and become a patron. That's over at patreon.com/expanding frontiers research. You can locate it through our website as well, or I've been tweeting about it. You can find us. Right now, we have it just set up as a simple $15 per month. You join and you get access to a number of things, and we're willing to see how this develops and how it grows as well. One of the things that we've been doing is helping researchers with their FOIA requests, with requests to law enforcement agencies and things like that. We enjoy that and we find it rewarding, and it's something that we had been wanting to do. So we're glad to be working on that. We'd like to continue with it. And we'd like to offer a wider audience individual help with their research as well. And we can help you make grammar requests, show you how they work, FOIA requests. Different regional places have their own acts, legislation for their version of the FOIA. And so we'd love for you to get involved with us on the Patreon, and we can offer individual help and instruction as well as group help on how to conduct research and different resources you can use, and how we can at least share what we've been doing to submit inquiries to law enforcement agencies and federal agencies and intelligence agencies and things like that. So on the Patreon right now, we already have 4 or 5 posts set up. The first one is public for everyone, and it explains some of what I was just discussing. Then we also have some other posts that you can look at, and you can see records we've obtained. For instance, one of the things we came across in our looking around, digging, shooting out requests, kind of gunslinging FOIA requests here and there, is a man named Allred. In the 20th century, was a cult leader in Utah. And the FBI had a number of files on him, and we obtained some of those and offer them for folks to look at. He was eventually assassinated. And see, what we need to do now is take records like that and read through them and see what we find, and then what's interesting that we find. And then we can ask the FBI, well, what else do you have on this guy? Or we can cite page, say 8, paragraph 2, we'd like to know more about this part, and things like that. And we'd like to make this a more open community and showing you how we do that. And I wanted to find some kind of medium that served a few different purposes to do that. And one was that, see, we have a lot of records we haven't blogged about yet because it's not completed. The investigation isn't completed, and we're not sure where it's headed and exactly what the records mean. But we also want to share them and make them available and have community discussion on them without just having, half a dozen blog posts that says refer back to the previous 5 blog posts to start piecing all of this together. And we'll be talking about some of those ongoing open records requests and storylines tonight as well. So that was one objective. And the other was, we really appreciate the financial support that has been offered by a number of people. We appreciate it. It's helpful. It goes, as we talked about at the end of the year on the show, it goes to help with FOIA fees, business registrations that are necessary in order to make it a nonprofit corporation that gives us certain benefits as a nonprofit, as well as gives donors certain benefits. And we'd like to make it where you can help support Erica's show and the ongoing show as well, that requires certain resources and ongoing commitments of, financial resources and time and things like this. But all of the money that we gain from the Patreon will go into the records requests and the fees, and we'll, of course, report that and be accountable for it. As you can see from our website, that we already practice industry best practices for nonprofits. But that's some about the Patreon, and we'll be going into that more and more and seeing how it develops. And I hope you'll get over there and look at the different things we have set up. In addition to Allred, we have some other lines of research already posted that you can follow along with as well.
And I want to just say that I really do think it is important to stress the fact that we are showing our financials, that this is something that nonprofits, that is the best practices for a nonprofit. They are all there for everyone to look at, which is wonderful. And so I really know that we are doing everything on the up and up, and we care about the organization, the nonprofit that we've started, and we've done, in my opinion, incredible work over the past year and a half. I mean, we've done work that other people in the media, credible sources in the media have highlighted, and that says, a lot to me. And I appreciate the fact that Jack does, like, I mean, he's doing FOIA requests and grammar requests, and he understands the language, which can be very intricate at times when you're making these records requests. And a lot of people don't have the knowledge of how to do it properly, and therefore they get denied and waste their time. And so I appreciate that. You can also go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to see a little bit of a video about Barry and Jack's work on the FOIA process. And I think these are great learning tools for people that not only care about, I mean, topics like the UAP topic, but then also greater issues, things that are going on in local government or national government that, we need to have transparency for and accountability for. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Um, get caught up on our blog. We have dozens of blog posts about FOIA requests, the material we've obtained, the things we're learning. We have dozens of video content posted, different posts on our video page. A lot of it are the interviews that Erica does and the discussions she has with artists and human rights activists. And we've got interviews and discussions with advocates for victims of domestic violence, human rights activists, just researchers, investigators, all kinds of things. And we'll continue to be putting that on the website. We have every intention of keeping that going and with the same consistency. And we hope that you'll join our Patreon and get the added benefits as well as help us fund this ongoing work as well. So there's been a lot of talk, kind of hijacked everyone's attention about this AARO report. I guess we have a certain obligation to at least acknowledge it happened.
right. Yes, it did. And obviously, as we can imagine, it's making waves in the UFO Twitter, UAP space. And so we definitely need to address a little bit of that. So I'm just going to show some things that we found. And I believe, I think Michael Huntington actually posted this screenshot, but this was about, and Michael, I see you in chat. It's nice to see you here. But this is about the people, 1 to 5, interviewees that had repeatedly voiced claims in public and private venues and have petitioned Congress in capacities on the UAP issue, and they have not provided any evidence to AARO. So who might these mystery people be? What do you think, Jack? What do you make of this?
Yeah, well, obviously, this all revolves around the usual suspects. As I saw someone in my Twitter feed made that remark and did a GIF from the popular movie Usual Suspects. We're obviously talking about the Mellon, Elizondo, Grush. Goes back to Bigelow, Davis, Pudoff, the whole crew. It's kind of interesting to me that it. How do you really, guys? I mean, serious question, not rhetorical. How do you address this without just coming right out and saying, um, an objective observation would seem to be that none of these people can produce anything but stories? I mean, is that a reasonable take on it?
Yes, and if you hear things knocking over in the background, we know that I've got an orange person right over here. So who
I
clearly
told
wants
her
to.
can't keep living with a gorilla, but she won't say anything.
God. Um, yeah, I mean, I mean, it's amazing to me, like that anybody could even give this the time of day. It's embarrassing, like to be quite frank. I mean, you've got people, and I know, I've had several people reach out to me and want to defend that their point of view and all of that, but I think it's ridiculous. I mean, how many TV shows or books or things like that can be done, and how can the topic be manipulated to provide potentially a financial or political gain for the same group of people? And it's like each time Eric Davis is mentioned and Hal Puthoff and all of these people who've clearly been debunked over the years. They've provided nothing of merit. All they've done is really kind of stir the pot. And I think people who are really concerned about this topic, who care about UFOs, UAP, that want to see serious research, I think that they're absolutely foolish to hang their hat on what these people are doing. If you really cared about the subject, you would be running the other way, far away from these people, because they are not doing anything of merit. And for me, it's like time to call out people that are giving anybody in this group the time of day. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I largely see it that way as well. I think there's a number of valid points that relate to this and could be discussed with it. And just to get one out of the way, I'll just say up front, the Department of Defense has some responsibility over the decades historically in using this subject when advantageous. So that at least needs to be acknowledged. I have not read the report in full yet. It didn't come out until this afternoon. We're recording this live the evening of March 8th, and it just came out late this afternoon. And I haven't read the full report, but I'm kind of presuming that they're not addressing the Department of Defense's full host of manipulation of the project and uses of the topic and uses of it. Like we could go back to the CIA, early 1950s, DCI Smith. There's documentation of his interest and using UFOs and saucers as a psychological operations tool. And just right down the line from there. I mean, a lot of our viewers know the different stories and the different circumstances. So we need to acknowledge that before we jump off on this, poor Dr. Kirkpatrick type of um, narrative. And I am much more supportive of him than not. I think I've said all along that I think To the Stars did was a very successful public relations campaign. They did a PR campaign. It was successful. And I think that's another aspect of this that we could consider is they lobbied to get this office made and now want to act victimized by the findings of the office instead of just presenting their evidence to the office that they claimed from the outset they had. Um, I don't know how else there is to look at it than that. It's extremely dubious, uh, bordering on not wanting to libel anyone with what it appears has happened here. I mean, it's that bad. It really is. It's no secret I've never respected the work of George Knapp and some of those others that have done their best to move this this story forward. And so I'll just leave it at that. Which kind of, I think we could segue there into one of our recent blog posts, and one of the topics at the Expanding Frontiers blog that we delved into here recently was the MUFON Bass agreements between MUFON and Bass that ties into that OSAP contract and project. Barry Greenwood donated quite a bit of material for the Expanding Frontiers archive. And one of the PDFs that he provided us was a file on MUFON and Bass collaboration. I found out via Twitter, as I was discussing this on Twitter, that came from a Roger Glissell and Kurt Collins blog post over at Kurt's blog, Blue Blurry Lines. And it was material that they compiled while making that blog post. And a couple of the things in this PDF that we have posted there in our archive and linked in the blog post is this PDF, and it has in it the contracts, draft contracts to be agreed upon between the Mutual UFO Network and Bass, which was Bigelow's corporation that was subcontracted by the Defense Intelligence Agency as part of OSAP. Now, it's interesting, in today's report, one of the things I noticed was that Kirkpatrick and the AARO claimed that while it was overseen by the DIA, they weren't directly seeking the things now that Knapp and Kelleher and Lukatsky imply and claim in their material and the books that have come out. Kirkpatrick didn't say that explicitly, but that's certainly a conclusion that could be drawn, that the DIA cut this off when the funding was up and when it was becoming more clear what was happening. And it was what I took Kirkpatrick's message to be. And these contracts between Bass and MUFON, a number of us, Erica and I, were around at that time, and she was in MUFON, and I was involved on a regular basis with people working in MUFON and what was known as a STAR team, and they had these different names for rapid response teams that were paid and were part of this, what now we know was DIA funding. And what was important to me about that collaboration was to know people in MUFON, was to know that there were rumors that it was an intelligence asset and that it had been infiltrated by intelligence agencies. And from one pole to the other, from believers to skeptics, a lot of people wanted to reject that. Like with many things in the UFO spheres, it was either embraced and run with in a fanatical, irrational manner, oftentimes, or laughed and dismissed out of hand. And one of the people that was saying this was, even interestingly enough, the then director of the organization, James Carrion. He later even wrote about that Bigelow would not disclose the source of the funds that he was wanting to negotiate with MUFON, only to John Schuessler of the MUFON board, and not the rest of the board, and just wanted to refer to the funds as coming from a sponsor, a private sponsor. So what's relevant here, among a number of things, is the rumors were obviously true
Mhm.
about being influenced by, if not hijacked by, an intelligence agency. And that means that the field investigators for MUFON were unaware that they were acting on behalf of the Defense Intelligence Agency when they were composing and submitting reports, which means the witnesses and the people that were being interviewed were not being told and not fully aware of what their participation in these reports and these interviews might mean, namely that they were submitting their personal information and their experiences and addresses and everything else to the Defense Intelligence Agency. We really don't know how that was used or what became of it. Part of it's just the point. In their latest book, Kelleher, Lukatsky, and Knapp, they discuss some database that was compiled out of everything from Blue Book forward, and one might presume that it went into this database as well, and that this is where they got their conclusions that were very dubious, in my opinion. But
And
that
that was
there's
Dr. Lay's little baby,
that's
right?
yeah, that's a blog post that we've got up that lets you see those contracts, thanks in part to the work of Barry Greenwood, Roger Glissell, and Kurt Collins. We can take a look at that. And I mean, it's relevant, folks, when nonprofit corporations are acting on behalf of intelligence agencies. The intelligence agencies are not disclosing and obstructing the fact that they are the financial sponsor and are using the nonprofits as a conduit, using Bass as a conduit to get money to MUFON, and the people then involved in the research and the projects aren't aware what the purposes of the circumstances are.
Well, and then you also have the fact that, you've got a person like Bigelow, I mean, the contractor, who is, as we've raised many times, is a questionable character for sure. So what was he specifically doing with that data? And those are questions I think, in my opinion, deserve to be answered. But that's okay. In the meantime, they'll continue to like dangle a carrot over here and roll out, their disinformation campaign, and we'll see. But I think at the end of the day, though, the 22 million, they weren't, the funding was not renewed. So
yeah, a group asked me to do a review of the book, Knapp's latest book, Initial Revelations, or whatever he calls it, and I did. And hopefully, they'll accept the review and publish it, directly. But one of the things that was relevant to me about that was I'm not aware of the DIA including any information about this database in their FOIA releases that we got in, I think it was 2022. Or whenever a lot of us went to work doing FOIA requests once that 2017 story broke, and it took about 5 years, but the DIA did process what it was willing to give us. And There may be some mention of a grand database, but it certainly was not overtly flagshipped by any means. And that's relevant because the authors of the book, Knapp and Company, referred to it as one of the primary accomplishments of the project, yet seems to be something else the DIA is obstructing or ashamed of and doesn't even want to acknowledge happened
I think
or
ashamed of would probably be
yeah, right, right. I
right. I mean,
mean,
it's
it
like,
appears there'd be plenty of things to be ashamed about it. Yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, with obviously they've, Bigelow has come out with nothing over the years. We know that. So it's just sweeping up data and what, I personally think that he was probably trying to figure out how to manipulate people that have a conspiracy bent to their mindset. But those are my own personal thoughts. I think it's we always assume that all of this has to do with UFOs, and pretty much 99% of it really doesn't. So, and but whatever people need to think.
I think that's a really interesting point, Erica. That, I'll give my little disclaimer here. There probably is life in the universe somewhere. I would confidently guess intelligent life. I mean, I would be dumbfounded if they're not. Like, wouldn't that be fascinating if you knew that out of all of that out there, there's nothing. Like wow. I mean, that would be fascinating. But if people want to get together and just talk about, I saw this thing one time, or here's what happened to me, or some energy they saw, some entity, whatever, friends at a campfire speculating, sharing stories, fine. Where the harm and the problem comes in is when organizations, individuals, intelligence agencies, county governments claim to be conducting scientific study and simultaneously market products and services. Then it becomes a conflict of interest between this supposed scientific investigation needs to turn out content and findings that get people hired at the Phenomenon event. So you've got a conflict of interest there, and it's something that we shouldn't ignore and is not going to go away by trying to make it fun and lighthearted and just see that's different. When $22 million of tax funds has been given to a self-described billionaire to spend on his personal interest or whatever it is that actually happened, that's what it appears happened, then it becomes a matter for the rest of us that this is said to be done under the guise of scientific inquiry. And as the report stated today, as I observed in my forthcoming book review about Knapp and Company's assertions, the very scientific paradigm they're claiming to be participating in does not recognize their activities as scientific. And there's just no getting around that.
No, I mean, I would say from what I gleaned about what was going on at the ranch, there's Ouija boards and putting toys in a fish tank that is attached to a light pole, in the middle of a pasture. I'm not sure what scientific merit was going on there, but I mean, it's just the whole thing is it really truly is an insult to intelligence. And I think the longer people are defending that or defending the people that are promoting this narrative, the more you've got to look at that person and just say, seriously, where we're trying to be, you and I both have a vested interest in this subject. It's a fascinating subject. I think at the end of the day, I want to, and I do believe, like we've been seeing in chat and like you mentioned earlier, that there is intelligent life somewhere. I mean, there's so many things that we don't know right now, and life is not black and white. And I think that's important, but I also feel like it's very sad that people have hijacked this subject for their own gain. And I think people need to step back and really say, thanks, Elizondo, thanks, Brandon Fugel, thanks to all the people that are using this for their own motivation and have not provided anything of merit, because that is a disservice to what we are all trying to do.
Well stated, Erica. That's another thing that made me motivated to propose to Erica that we join forces to some extent. I had been riding the UFO trail for years. She had been doing UFO classified. I listened and watched all the time. I'd become not just a guest, but a fan and was learning from it. And it was important to me to work with someone that found what they were doing rewarding and fun and interesting. But it was also important to me to help facilitate a increased public understanding, even if just in my small little corner of the universe, if I just reach a couple of people that find it helpful and important to learn more about standards of evidence. And that's kind of what Erica was talking about there too, is there have to be standards. We can't agree on what something happened is. We can't agree on circumstances if we can't agree on what constitutes reliable evidence. Like if you think that what Brandon Fugel is doing constitutes reliable evidence, well, of what, I really don't even know what the narrative is at this point of staying on TV, I guess. I really don't know. But if you think that constitutes reliable evidence, then there's nowhere to meet. There's no discussion to go forward there. And I want to help people understand the standards that professional researchers use, professional journalists are supposed to use, and how we go about vetting stories, understanding what's happening, and providing to you, our audience, stories that are interesting but reliable as well. And on that note, we've had a development in Uintah County that is sad, is intriguing, is newsworthy, and that is that Expanding Frontiers was getting reports that a deceased body had been located near Skinwalker Ranch. As the story was developing, we were aware that a motorcycle had reportedly been discovered abandoned in the vicinity of the ranch. And that had been reportedly all the way back in November. And we
Right.
were
November
getting
24th.
more recent reports that, yes, November 24th. And we got more recent reports that a body had been recovered. Now, before we wanted to do anything with this story, because I mean, what do you know from that? We made sure and got a statement from the Uintah County Sheriff's Office, and we made sure that they would acknowledge that a body actually had been recovered. And so when we got that confirmation, we went ahead with the story. The sheriff said, and it's on our blog, the chief deputy at the sheriff's office told us that they had recovered a body. There was no foul play suspected, and that they did not want to give us any further comment. I urged them to address a couple of other points that would help fill in some details. And he politely explained again that he had no further statements for me. So, with that, we submitted a public records request to the sheriff's office for the reports about the incident and the recovery of the motorcycle and anything that they would release about that. And that is still open. What would you like to add to that, Erica?
I do feel that there will be more to this story, and I think that I know that you and I are both working behind the scenes to do our due diligence to make sure that what we put forward is accurate information, and that we're getting comments from public officials about this. So we will be putting more forward about the story, and it is a very unfortunate event that somebody allegedly took their own life. As the sheriff said, there was no foul play, but we will be working on that story.
Yeah, we have some more details that are coming in that we just want to be responsible about the story. And we do have reason to believe that the person had an interest in the dubious stories about the ranch and may have been in the area for that reason. Um, so we have an interest in how this might develop and how it might cast the whole situation. As I was just discussing about, there's already a conflict of interest when commercialism gets involved with supposed scientific investigation, and then county government gets involved in paying for some type of festival or conference to highlight these circumstances. There's a lot of conflict of interest. And then if we have people getting mortally harmed in pursuit of these stories, it is relevant and needs, in my opinion, to be public record. I'm not looking to pry into anyone's circumstances. I'm not looking to learn anything that's not my right to know or available for public information. We would just like the sheriff's office to release everything under the GRAMA Act that is releasable as explained in the GRAMA, and we have no reason to believe that they will not do that. And we will report it and the other things we're learning and the things that are starting to appear to be associated with this story as we can do so in the most responsible manner.
Right, and I see Tim Brigham in the web and in chat, and he's making a really great point, which is the point that you and I try to make almost every time that we chat. It is the fact that these things, when you're putting out false narratives and putting out very negative false narratives, they do have an impact. And can we say that this is the sole responsibility for of A, B, C, and D, person A, B, C, and D? No, but I think there's a pattern here, and we've seen that when we've done the FOIA request for Ramtha, and Jay-Z Knight, and some of the things that have taken place up near her compound. And it does have an effect on people that are potentially mentally unstable. And I think that it's sad. And I think that we need to do better than that. And when people like are speaking at the Skinwalker conference with the Attorney General as the panel moderator and things, and they're talking about the deaths and the hitchhiker effect and all of these things, and there is that does mean something to people, and people do take that very seriously. We've seen, with QAnon, some of the horrific things that have happened as a result of people buying into that narrative. I mean, people have been killed as a result of that. And so I think this is something that is truly important, and it'll be something that we are, going to be pursuing and hopefully shining a spotlight on as we continue.
I think the Ramtha analogy is a very apt comparison, and indeed it is that um, people, you have someone putting forward a very sensational story, and this it's why it gets compared to evangelism and religion as well. Is we're just a few shades of difference in these different people and the things they do for a living and to generate revenue. And with Ramtha, we indeed have just hundreds of responsive records we've obtained about people that it's reasonable to assume are not the most mentally stable at the times that they made efforts to access the compound and thought they needed to get at Ramtha and talk to these people. And interestingly, a number of them are described as former students, which means they used to pay her, is what former student means. And so we see that. I think it's a really fair comparison to we had the case of the young man that was killed by police when he was in a state of distress and was, I believe, if I recall correctly, telling dispatchers he thought that skinwalkers were attacking him, or he was
Right, and that
wouldn't
was in
get out.
Colorado.
Yeah,
And,
wouldn't get
and I
out of the
think
car.
Right. And I do think that, Christian Glass, that was, to me, I remember watching the news when that story hit, and then watching the, the videos, the body cam footage of that really tragic and horrific event of clearly a young man, a brilliant, beautiful young soul that was having a mental health crisis, and really felt that he was being followed by skinwalkers and was scared and had pulled off the road and needed help. And the people responding to him were so inept. They eventually tormented him for almost an hour, and then ended up killing him. And I think that says a lot about what we need to do with law enforcement to try to train people on mental health and the way they address issues. And then also, it does, again, shine a spotlight on when you put something like this out there to people and you keep re-emphasizing this without any factual information to support it. I mean, there is a point in time when there should be some responsibility taken for promoting this type of thing.
Yeah, that's where I was headed with the similarities to evangelism. Is one of the reasons that people made death threats to Dr. Kirkpatrick and are so emotional about this is that it represents things to them personally. They're not really arguing about whether the pilots that saw the Tic Tac had an encounter with some type of non-human intelligence. What they're really arguing, in my opinion, a lot of the time is that people hear Erica and I having this discussion, and what they hear and feel to them is we are discounting them personally. That Jack is saying this didn't happen to me. He doesn't believe me. He doesn't think this happened. And the more reinforcement they can get from the Jeremy Corbells of the world that can at least make them feel like they are validated and that there's hope, that's very much like an evangelistic charlatan type of selling hope and religion. And I think that's why it gets compared a lot. And that's just a really good point that you're making there, Erica. And thanks. It's disturbing, and it anytime that we have such emotional issues, they're going to be polarizing, and it's difficult to come to terms with that. Um, it we gave our disclaimers. We're willing to go where the evidence leads. We're just asking for public records requests, and there will still be people that will make it as if I am the problem here with this scenario.
And it's amazing. Clearly, people don't actually listen to what we're saying. They just like to take little snippets, like a lot of people, do. And then you've got a few people that are promoting that narrative and they run with it. And I think, obviously, if anybody's ever listened to my show, that I have had experiences that I still can't explain. I'm not discounting, you're not discounting, people's experiences. But what we're trying to do is show people that there are grifters, that there are intelligence agencies, that there are, I mean, this is pretty significant in the way this subject has played out over the decades, and people need to be aware of that, especially right now as we get ready to move into an election cycle. The rhetoric is going to ramp up, and you can see that by Jeremy Corbell and Knapp and the disclosure teams, all of their rhetoric, which is very much, distrust the government and we're coming for you. And we've seen as a result, like death threats, as you mentioned earlier, that have been leveled at public figures. And that's really unfortunate that people like Corbell and George Knapp would allow that, or Lou Elizondo would allow that type of behavior, and not only allow it, but encourage it. That says something about them. And hi, Alien Girl, nice to see you. So, I mean, it's just.
Yeah, and one of the points I've made a number of times, Erica, is when intelligent, competent people want to make a cohesive, systematic point, present their evidence in a systematic, cogent way, they do. They don't conduct PR campaigns and try to sway public opinion by making someone afraid to disagree with them or be an outcast from the group if they don't say things a certain way or behave a certain way or employ those types of cult uh, techniques and mentalities. They systematically present their evidence and they show their point. And when someone doesn't do that, there's really nothing else to surmise, but they don't have the evidence. I mean, it's funny. It's like, in one way, I feel like I'm sitting here and stating platitudes that like any idiot should know. And then on the other hand, it's like, but at the same time, we have whole demographics of people that are just in such denial that would argue with me the evidence has been presented. And then we're back to the standards of evidence that your blurry photo doesn't make an alien civilization, and now, so what about individuals? And I bring that up because our friend Jeremy Vaney comes to mind. He's done your show, we've done his show, and one of the times I was talking with him, he was saying, "Well, what do you think about this person? Well, this person claims that," and I was kept saying, "I don't know, Jeremy, I don't know." And finally, when he asked me something, I said, "How many times can I say I don't know before you get mad at me? Like that's just not my area. I mean, we could talk forever about what may have happened to this person or may have happened to that person." So I kind of lost interest in it. And I just want to get records available for public review, look at them, have discussions with people, what we think they indicate. And I'm not trying to tell anybody what they did or didn't see in the Nevada desert in 1974. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and I think, you and I have talked a lot about on the shows in the past, talked about the fact that, you and I both came into this with a completely different mindset. I mean, I came into this, I mean, I've always thought the subject was fascinating since I was a little child. It's like the thought of another intelligent life out there. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful and exciting thought, and I still think it is. And, for me to go through this learning process of being introduced to specific characters who we named earlier in the show, who are probably the people that we're talking about, or the AARO was talking about in the report. You get these stories that are very clearly coordinated by a group of grifters they've really, like I said, they've polluted the field for decades. And after you go through years and years of this, and I've been very meticulous about taking notes of, keeping conversations of, all of my interactions. And, I sit back and look through my files, and it's just like, wow, okay. So here you have this person saying this is the group of people he hangs out with, this is what's going on behind the scenes, this is what's going on in the media. And you start digging into the associations that these people have, Chris Mellon, Leslie Keene, and the political backgrounds that they have. And it becomes, there's obviously much more to this story. And that's why it's so important for people to understand that this isn't just about like this UFO case and, disproving yada yada. There's a lot of other things that are shaping this narrative, and you have to know what people's business connections are. You have to know where they're getting their funding. How many nonprofits do they have set up that are shell companies? There's so many things going on, and people need to give this, they need to do their due diligence and understand the dynamics of this. And that is a lesson I have learned. And that is why I'm trying to share what I've learned.
Great point. We do typically come at this with somewhat of a countercultural attitude, and that science is trying to dupe us, the government's trying to hide things. And if a person is truly open minded, they're willing to look into how much is that true as compared to just rationalizing things to help your confirmation bias. And I noticed along the lines of what you're saying, I just skimmed the report so far, but one of the things I noticed in the AARO report was that they wrote about how when the OSAP ended, there was a group that wanted it to continue, and nobody wanted to fund it in the intelligence community. And one of their strategies was to have public debates in public forums. I think it said maybe educational places. One might think universities. Somewhat came to mind for me was what happened at Rice, something like that. And it was saying that um, there were a couple of footnotes, and I just scrolled to the end to see what they were citing for this material, and it said a report from a private, like a non-government organization. And I thought, okay, that could have been Bass, it could have been NID, something like that, 2009-ish, something, Bigelow, MUFON, in that OSAP timeframe. Just speculating there, but my point being, it cited this report for a strategy of the people that wanted to continue the ATIP and the OSAP to take the debate public, sway public opinion, do it through academics if possible. I'm paraphrasing here. And that it was taken for granted that there is an ET presence, and that, again, paraphrasing, the AARO report suggested that this group and these people wanted to just move off of the debate, and said, well, it said they would hire certain journalists, and they would hire debate moderators that would lean the discussion towards stop even looking for, quote, evidence, unquote. Like we don't even want to talk about that stuff because there's no point in looking for it. We already know they're here. Let's just go ahead with this. And that in no way, shape, or form represents the educational process, the research process, the journalism process. It's disturbing to me. It doesn't surprise me at all. It's what I've been writing about for 10 years, but it's very disappointing.
It's definitely it is interesting, and it's yeah, it'll be interesting to see the way things roll out, and obviously there will be more posts from Corbell and Knapp and the usual brokers of nonsense and things. And I don't know if this is going to give them more fire, for their to light their pitchforks, or what will happen. But it is definitely, I think, for most people who are like I said, actually care about the subject and are trying to do things in a positive way. This is following that crew. They've clearly shown the whole world that they're providing nothing of merit, and that they're just providing distractions. And as a result, it's really unfortunate for the subject.
Yes, and I'll segue into another blog post that, as many of our viewers know, listeners, we took a deep dive into Phenomicon year and a half ago, and discovered that it was a Uintah County funded paranormal conference, and that members of the crew of the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch were being paid to present and be speakers. And that's the conflict of interest I'm talking about. For instance, if you're claiming to conduct a scientific project, but you're obviously not going to get asked to speak about that there's nothing unusual going on, well, then that creates a conflict of interest. And we, of course, have the ridiculous statements that Dr. Taylor has has made at that conference, and we've seen those on YouTube. And Stephen Greenstreet has done a good job of chronicling that and reporting on it as well. So as that continued, we looked into it again this year, and we requested their records, and we were disappointed with the results of our grammar requests. And one of the requests we appealed, and that resulted in another 140 pages on top of the initial, just I think 14 pages or something that I had been given by the Travel and Tourism Division. It also resulted in us seeing some inter-office communication where they were deciding what they should release, I don't want to give him something different than you do, so why don't you handle this? And the point there being that it's not arbitrarily up to a government employee to decide what is or is not released when a records request is made. It's not about if it will make your employer look silly. It's not about if someone will be embarrassed. It's only about, is it or is it not exempt under the Public Records Act? That's it. That's all you need to look at. And so we received an additional 140 pages when we appealed this initial inadequate response to our request. And somewhat in defense of the Uintah County people and administrators, I get the feeling from interacting with some of the administrators in Utah that oftentimes there's not a lot of respect put on their Public Records Act. Over at Utah Investigative Journalism Project, Eric Peterson did a great job of covering the lack of competency displayed in the Utah Attorney General's office about grammar requests. At one point, a judge advised the office that he had doubts that a thorough response to a request could even be done based on what he felt he had discovered about the way records were stored and cataloged at the AG's office. So I feel like it's somewhat of a culture, and I think that any office, whether we're talking about the FBI in a specific field office, or whether we're talking about the county government and the specific tourism and travel division, or anywhere, you're either well educated to handle public records requests or you're not. And if a government is not actively educating its personnel and has people in place that are meant to handle these requests and handle them properly and professionally, well, then they are in effect obstructing the public records process. Utah calls theirs the GRAMA, and it explicitly states that any record is considered public unless covered by statute to be exempt from the disclosure. So there has to be specific reason that a record would be withheld. And so of these 140 extra pages that we obtained, over 90 pages of those were contracts drawn up during for Phenomicon, with vendors, with speakers, and they are heavily redacted. Pretty much the only thing that is shown on these contracts is the name of the individual and the amount they were paid, and then who signed it on behalf of the county. Like there's a little information like that. And pretty much of each 2 and 3 page contract, the rest of the contracts are blacked out. So we appealed that again. So that we got those contracts through appeal, then we appealed it again. And this month we are scheduled to have a hearing with the Utah State Records Committee that we're looking forward to. And we would like them to look at these documents in camera or examine them and see if there is any reason that they should be withheld. I'm extremely doubtful that there's anything in the GRAMA that exempts agreements to speak at paranormal conferences from being disclosed. The reason given to us was just that it was as agreed upon between the vendor and the county,
Right.
that
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
terms were private. And that's not a statute. You can't see, that's basically making an agreement with a party that will obstruct the GRAMA. Please go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to that hearing and to go through the process that we've gone through with, the back and forth and using grandma as a wonderful and an important tool for those of us who want and deserve transparency from our elected officials, people serving, that we're, I think it's going to be an interesting thing to find out, how the State Records Committee handles this case. And like you say, you bring up a very good point. Why in the world would a contract be redacted just because you've got a paranormal contract and a speaker agreement? I think it's going to be an interesting thing to see. And we've worked very, very hard on this for over a year. And I just have to say thank you, Jack, for everything that you've done with regard to this ongoing story.
Thank you, Erica. I think people that have been reading my work a while, especially if they've read my 2 books and used to read the UFO Trail, and people that have listened to our discussions, I think they'd understand I'm really not even interested in the conference or the subject matter of the conference at this point, as much as I'm really interested in the process. That one of the things I like about the Freedom of Information Act, and in this case, the GRAMA, Government Records Access Management Act, I think it's called for Utah, is that it's just kind of a flow chart. It's impersonal. You make your request. You say, I think you'd have these records. You give that request to the administrator. They tell you, yeah, we do, or no, we don't. And they either give them to you or they explain why you get them in part. And when part of it's redacted, they give you a statute that tells you why that's exempt from disclosure. Then on your flow chart, you either say, oh, okay, now we go to the blog and we publish it and we make a blog post, or you go, no, I don't agree with you here. Let's see what the chief administrative officer says. And you appeal it and you send it over there and you tell them why you don't think this statute applies. And a really good reason, as in this case that we're going to have heard now, is they didn't apply a statute to it. So obviously that statute doesn't apply. So then the chief administrative officer will look at it And that's how we actually even got the 140 pages. Was they said, yeah, there's a lot more that wasn't released to you, and here you go. But some of it was really heavily redacted. So then we're going to appeal it again. So, see, I got interested as much as what's behind those redactions. I got interested in the process of, just as a writer and researcher and an advocate of public records, I feel a certain responsibility to carry these things to their completion and follow that flow chart. And if all the attorneys and all the administrators say, no, I think they got this right, and now the next thing would be sue us. Okay, I'll accept that, fine. But every step of the way in a number of these offices has been either incompetent or obstructive. So whether they do it on purpose or they just don't care, maybe they're indifferent and, like, can the FOIA nerd just go away? I don't know, but that's why you keep carrying it out now, is because, like, if on this one case your three assessments of this request were wrong, then I don't want your fourth assessment. I want the records committee to look at it,
Right.
and I think that's a fair way to look at it.
Absolutely. And I know for me personally, having used Grandma over the years for numerous things, it is interesting to see the process and to see who understands the process and who is going to try to hide information and do what they need to do because there is a potential for, a wrongdoing at the hands of public officials and things. And so I think this will be very interesting. Uinta County has been embroiled in a lot of controversy, and Vernal specifically. I know that we've mentioned before that they had the lawyer for Vernal City had been involved in installing cameras in the women's restroom to take photos of women. And amazingly enough, he no longer has a job, but he was never prosecuted with any crime, to my understanding. So
Mm.
interesting goings ons in that area.
It is. I mean, any city. I mean, Miami, New Orleans, Nashville. I mean, anywhere, if you just Google corruption, you're going to find things that have happened, errors in judgment that are made. But it does seem that there's a lot per capita in some of these outlying Utah counties. And I mean, I don't know. I've never even been there, so much less lived there. So I don't know what they're doing. But as I say, I do find the process fascinating. And early on with this story, when I interviewed Thomas Winterton, I told him, and we published the video of the interview, that what it appears to me is that you have a group of people there that, when they're just asked to be as accountable as everyone else, they feel picked on and oppressed. And I'm just interested in the grammar process, which leads us to the Attorney General's office that I mentioned, that, as I said, Eric Peterson has done such a good job of covering, among others, some really good work done at the Salt Lake Trib and at Fox 13 on the Attorney General's office as well, that has its share of problems these days, the Utah Attorney General's office. But one of the things that we sent a grammar request to was, as Erica mentioned earlier, and Stephen Greenstreet has aptly covered in his work with the New York Post, is the Utah Attorney General seems to have a relationship with Brandon Fugel, And the Attorney General was in the habit of cultivating and promoting these dubious stories about Skinwalker Ranch. Various people, like Mr. Gerke at the Salt Lake Trib, had covered this, and the statements from the Attorney General office were to the effect that this is on the Attorney General's own time. It's not in an official capacity. Now, we could have a whole show and debate on that. That, if a public official jumps out here and does something on his own time and not in an official capacity, they obviously understand that their position and who they are is why they've been invited
Right.
to do this. There's certain responsibilities of having that title that go with the territory. And it was only upon being pressed for statements that the office would tell the Salt Lake Trib anything at all. It's not like they just overtly made this clear. And if I recall correctly, Stephen Greenstreet has been stonewalled a number of times on trying to get clarification about this. So we submitted a grammar request for email communications between the Utah Attorney General and Brandon Fugel. And among the things that the Attorney General had been doing with Fugel was appearing on the show, making sensational statements about wanting to know what's going on in Utah airspace, wanting to know what's going on at the ranch. He was a guest at, is it Comic Con or X
It
Con
was
or
one of the cons,
yeah, one of the
conveniently.
and ComX, whatever they want to call it. Yeah,
Janet, yeah,
and
whatever. Yes, yes.
yeah, and he did a panel with the Skinwalker bunch, and Fugel
Introduced as
tweeted
the
it.
Attorney General.
Yes, and we've covered that along with some other questionable activities. So we received a response on the grammar request, and that is at our blog about Reyes and Fugel emails. And they acknowledged 7 pages of records were reviewed, and all 7 were withheld in full. And they gave us a statute in their defense, and which gives you the code. You can then go to the website and look it up. FanX, thank you. And you can look up the code and see, okay, why are they saying that this is not releasable under the GRAMA? And they said they had 7 pages of emails, but they were withheld. And I'm paraphrasing here that the GRAMA statute said that it might endanger someone's life or safety, something to that extent. So we appealed, and we argued that given their public exposure, that this was much different than your average citizen, that they put themselves in the public light, willfully promoted themselves in the public light, and had a greater burden of responsibility to proving that an unusual and unwarranted invasion of privacy would occur by releasing these emails. The Attorney General's office actually agreed with, in their defense, with our argument. And we also provided some case law in our appeal of other GRAMA cases that had ruled as we were arguing. And they agreed with us, and they provided us 7 pages of emails in redacted form. They withheld certain information. We have made these pages available on our Patreon. You could jump over there and get your first look at them, because we have not published them yet in our blog, because we are still looking for other more information about this situation. And in the pages that they gave us, it referenced another law enforcement agency. So we submitted a request to that agency and cited these records and told them, here's what we know so far. Basically, can you guys help us out? And they have told us that they are reviewing records and they wanted more time than the typical time frame for the type of request I submitted. To a summary of the records, and again, trying to do this as responsibly as possible, would indicate that Brandon Fugel seemed to notify Sean Reyes of threats that he had received of some type. And it seems then, if I'm reading this email chain correctly, that Reyes sent this to his, forwarded the email himself to his official account so that he could distribute this information to people that worked with him as investigators in the Attorney General's office. The details of it are redacted, and as I've said, we're only looking for what is fairly public information, and if it has some significance about the ongoing narratives and stories that are questionably built around the ranch. And I think that some things could be discerned about that if more, you would have to know, I'll put it this way, you would have to know who threatened him and why to know if it had anything to do with, in order to know what it had to do with and if it had anything significant about other aspects of his persona.
Right. And I think Reyes, as I've talked about before, as we've seen in media, especially here in Utah, Sean Reyes has been involved with Tim Ballard, Operation Underground Railroad, who has come under a lot of scrutiny and has been, there's our lawsuits that are being filed, and he has reportedly, allegedly abused several women under the guise of helping child sex trafficking. Sean Reyes has been involved. He was on the board of Operation Underground Railroad and has been accused of bullying witnesses that were trying to come forward. And so you've got, that part of the Sean Reyes, our Attorney General, and then his willingness to go out again and promote another potentially fraudulent narrative. In using his office to do that. I think that's most unfortunate, and so there are lots of issues with the Attorney General and his endorsements, and then you start, you look at who is it that has done Lynn Packard over the years. He's an investigative journalist, and I got to refer all of you to his work. If you go back and you look at what Lynn Packard has done over the years with regard to trying to expose some of the corruption here with the Attorney General and with the powers that be here in Utah. He was really one of the people that he was the person that kept this movement going and did great work, and now that's gotten exposure where it should. With regard to what we'll find from the Attorney General and the records requests, there are other blogs that we've written about SafeMoon and cryptocurrency and the involvement of Brandon Fugel with that. And so there could be a lot of different areas to look. And again, all of these things are verified. We have done our due diligence to get information, as you state, that is available to the public, and this is what we're putting forward. And we know that our that people that follow our work can do their due diligence and understand the integrity that we are. We pride ourselves on that at Expanding Frontiers.
Yes, we do, and uh, we're sharing this as we receive it, and we're willing to discuss it and analyze it. When we finally get ready to publish a blog post, we'll reach out to the relevant people and ask them for comment. But it does. Warrant mention that for the post that's up now, we reached out to Mr. Fugel and he did not respond. He was offered an opportunity to comment on when the Attorney General office declined denied our request for emails when they acknowledged 7 pages but denied it. We did the blog post and asked Fugel if he had any statements, and I did not receive a response to that inquiry. And so, as I said, now we've appealed it, and they gave us the 7 pages of redactions, which lets us see what is said in it, and then send a request to a collaborating law enforcement agency and just follow it out and see where it goes. And that's how we ended up with the Phenomicon story. Was, like I said, there is an impersonal flow chart with public records requests, and you get one and you see where it goes, you send another one and you send another one and you send another one, and eventually you get a story there. And that's what I've become interested in, as compared to, as you so aptly put, Erica, intelligence insulting narratives. Grown men running around like they're scared of their shadow is just an insult to intelligence.
It really is, and it definitely. I think now things like this are coming, into sharper focus, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that people that have, with AARO and things like this. I mean, it's you people have claimed for many years, for decades, that they have proof of portals opening up on a specific ranch or objects that are being seen, off the coast near military bases, so on and so on, and yet we've never seen any proof of anything other than just unreliable narrators, like promoting stuff that gets them hits, clicks, likes, and money at the end of the day. So
Right. And so what we can do is latch onto these stories, stay on them, just keep doing the next step. When you get the response and you see another law enforcement agency, that's what happened with Ramtha too. The FBI initially only gave us a couple of pages of records on our request to the FBI about Ramtha, but in that request, it mentioned the Thurston County Sheriff's Office had been contacted, and they indicated they were by the FBI, and the sheriff indicated he was aware of the Ramtha group. So there you go. Ask the sheriff, how aware are you? What do you got on them? And we're still getting records from that. We've done 2 posts on the Patreon of records we haven't yet published on the blog, because we wanted to get them together and see what they indicate. They have to be read, they have to be analyzed. We've got a post on the Patreon about the emails that we received in appeal from the Attorney General's office. We've got the post on the Patreon about the records we obtained from the FBI on the cult leader in Utah that was assassinated, all read.
yep.
And We've got a document we put up that we received from the FBI responsive to the UFO Research Coalition. And here's an interesting one for you. It doesn't reference the UFO Research Coalition. So somebody jump in there and help us figure out why it's responsive to us. There's an interesting puzzle, you know.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like we are encouraging people to be active in this. And I think that's the great thing about not only the show that we're doing and the chat that we have, but the Patreon and getting people, excited about helping us look at these public records and making connections that we can look into. And I think this is a group effort for sure.
Yeah, and I just get fascinated by that kind of stuff. And one of the ways that interest grew, Erica, was back when I was investigating NICAP, and I did FOIA requests on Joseph Bryan. I got a file, and I was really happy to get it. And I'm like, oh wow, this is so cool. And I'm reading what um, Director Hoover of the FBI is exchanging memos with his assistant director, and they're talking about Brian, and Brian's coming for a visit. And they show him around the FBI headquarters because he's supposed to write a story for a magazine. He was a writer, CIA psyops guy. I eventually, pieced together, through confirmed, it was already known, but I verified it through this ongoing stuff. So I was really interested, and I'm reading all this stuff. And then in the middle of all that, there's a memo on a guy named Pinky Thompson was his name, Lewis Pinky Thompson. And it's just in there in the middle of it all. And I didn't know what it was there for. And I think, as people commonly do, I kind of shrugged it off as it must not be very important if I don't know what it is. And that should be a red flag for our research community. And I'm reminded of it because how I said it's just kind of stuck in my craw that I don't know why this document that the FBI gave us was responsive to UFO Research Coalition. And it's about the FBI interviewing some people. And, obviously there's some connection there, but I'd really like to know more about that. It reminds me of that because I couldn't figure out what this Thompson guy had to do with anything. And I wasn't really even interested, so they did some background check on Thompson. What's it doing in Brian's file? And I don't remember the exact way that it came about, but eventually his name came back up as I kept looking around. I think it was looking in at CIA calendars, and I saw where Dulles had a meeting with Pinky Thompson. That's a pretty easy name to remember. I mean, that's probably the same Pinky Thompson. And then when it refocused my attention back on that guy, I discovered that he was a CIA officer and a CIA asset, and actually even worked in Brian's psyops crew that he had put together. And most of them were Ivy League, if not Princeton men, and it all fell into place. But yeah, that I got really interested in the whole FOIA process for reasons like that. That you'll see something and you'll be like, this seems out of place. And it's only out of place from your perspective. Like if you were the person that was composing the file, just like your research notes, or your like our friend Emily, she's putting together a video. She'll have a long word file of all the things that are going in this video would make perfect sense to her what these different things are in there for. And I just find that fascinating with looking through the FOIA records.
I know it is fascinating. I mean, it's just this puzzle that you put together, and that's, I think, one of the big reasons why I continue to do this, because the more I learn and the more I go through the files that I have, the archive that we have. It's just it is absolutely wonderful to have a up close and personal thing, but to also be able to look at it from a higher perspective, and then see all the networks that come together and things. So I love it, and I want to just really quickly thank Bill Pullen for he's now a moderator on our Facebook group, which I have definitely neglected, and so I just want to thank Bill for offering to do that. I want to thank Peter for always doing such a great job promoting this show. Thank you, Peter. That means the world to me. You've always been wonderful to help support us. Mario is not here, and I'm missing seeing him behind the scenes, but I want to thank Mario as well for all that he's done for me over the years. So I want to thank all of you for being a part of our team. So just wanted to say that. And I want to also ask you about Avi Loeb and the Galileo project, because that was also, something that we did, that turned a few heads and got a lot of hits. Can you just give us the details
Yeah,
of
sure, sure. I first of all, I want to echo your appreciation of everyone. I really appreciate William wanting to help out with the Facebook page. That's William Pullen. Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate that. And take it and run, buddy. I mean, I've been posting a little bit over there, just honestly, since Erica mentioned to me that you had an interest in it. I thought, well, I'll at least start putting some stuff there. Don't worry a bit about what I'm doing. Take it and run. Post. You do a good job with your Facebook stuff. You're good at social media. We appreciate your help. And by all means, I mean, let us know how we can support you and what you find interesting to do. And we appreciate your help.
we do. And again, I just want to say, Peter, thank you, because Peter has been working, tirelessly every week to promote the show on various groups on social media. And so this is really cool to see that we're creating this team. And Steve and, all of you out there that are engaging, and Emily and Tanner. And, we've got a really nice, incredible group of people that we are working with and that we'll support. And I think this is exactly what the subject needs. So it's very encouraging to me.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And as we've been discussing, if we can help with your research interests, submit some FOIAs for you, help you write them, help you appeal them, whatever. We would be happy to. That's what we're organized to do, and we could not welcome more the group of people that are asking pointed questions and doing responsible work with the Freedom of Information Act and law enforcement requests, and getting records that are public and giving them to people. When I first started doing it, one of the things that I really liked was when a police officer would ask me, what's your business? Or, you a writer, state your business, that, you're not even a person in this request. I was proud to tell him, I can understand your caution with, if I'm asking about a UFO case or a person that's been killed adjacent to a fringe topic. I can understand the stigma there, and that they don't want to stir up foolishness. And I was proud to say, I just want the records so I can write about what really happened.
Right.
You know, that's what I want the records for. I don't want to spread rumors. If I wanted to spread rumors, I wouldn't need to be asking you for the report, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
so thanks, Peter, for spreading the word. All of you. That's very important to us to um, repost our posts, spread our links. If you enjoy the show and it's meaningful to you, please share it with others. And you can join our Patreon. You can still make a one-time donation via our secure PayPal link at expandingfrontiersresearch.org.
And I also
But
want to just
go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You first. No, you first, because I'm
Okay,
going
I
to
just want
launch
to
into another
So
long-winded
I also want to just
discussion.
thank the people that have made donations via PayPal, Randy and Michael and other people that have been so generous to do that. You know, we really, um, we have, Jack and I have both done this and we have paid out of pocket. I'm not sure when we will ever recoup the investment that we've made, but we've both decided that this is something that is so meaningful to us and we see the importance of doing what we're doing, and so you know we are funding this work ourselves for a majority of it, and so it is very cool to have people that can donate. And we understand that everybody has their own financial situations. We're all going through that as well, and so even just to have you here and support us in chat and to be offering your opinions and interacting with us, that is in and of itself just very valuable. So thank you to all of you.
Yes, thank you very much. So you brought up the Galileo, Avi Loeb and the Galileo project. Yes, that's the circumstance where we submitted a FOIA to the FBI on the Galileo project. They produced some records. They're pretty heavily redacted about an electronic communication that uh, was with the FBI, where they were discussing the methodology and used and what the Galileo project was doing. As is pretty much, I mean, it's really not even a policy, it's just what we do. And what writers and content creators should do is when we get something like that, before we publish a story, we'll reach out to the person and share it with them and offer them an opportunity to comment. And Avi Loeb responded that he was not aware that this communication was taking place with the FBI. And I followed up with that and said, so to be clear, it's not you or anyone you're aware of in the project that was being interviewed or discussing things with the FBI. And he said, no, not that he's aware of. So we really just don't know what their interest in looking into it was. Uh, we could speculate, but again, this is just where one of the things Erica and I are interested in are getting things we can sink our teeth in and actually look at. Show me a document. Show me something on a piece of paper. Don't just quote things out of thin air and tell me about things that are happening. Um, show me records. And so we were proud to find that, and it shows that for whatever reasons the FBI had some interest, whether it was an investigation or not, we don't know, in the Galileo project. And we regularly submit requests on topics like that to try to piece together, put the puzzle together of what's going on with these different people in these projects. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? At least find out why the intelligence community is interested to whatever extent we can, and see what comes out of it. It's difficult not to view a lot of this. And by this, I mean when you have journalists, or at least self described journalists, the George Knapps, the Jeremy Corbells, all the way back to the Donald Keyhoes, that are actively telling American intelligence officers to leak information. It's really difficult not to view that as an attack on the American
Right.
intelligence community.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if the Russians and the Chinese and the various adversaries, that's what I mean when you hear me say global adversaries, when the enemies, if they weren't behind that in the first place, there is like zero possibility they didn't jump in when they got the opportunity.
Right.
So the reason we'd be submitting requests is we'd actually be more surprised if there's not a file on these
Absolutely.
different.
And I think case in point, and the Galileo project, I mean, you're creating, setting up instrumentation that is, adjacent to areas that are military installations or, so on and so forth. I mean, I know that the UFO community could say that, it's, we're obviously the dark cabal and we're trying to shut down good research. But I think rationally, you should ask questions as to why would this be the case? Why would I mean, we have national security issues going on right now. That this is very plain as day. So, on what planet do we think that we could? Um, do some of the things that we're doing. And I think we should ask ourselves those questions. What is the motivation of somebody or an organization to collect data that is, in yeah, I don't need to say anymore. You did a great interview with Jensine that people can go back and look at, and she explained some of the things that we're talking about here. But I mean, there are a lot of concerns that we should have about why people like Corbell and Knapp and Jacques Vallée and some of these people who have, especially Knapp and Vallée, who have been over to, Russia on numerous occasions. And, I don't know. I think it's very suspect, especially when you look at intelligence reports and look at the fact that Russian propaganda is being promoted and is embedded in the conspiracy movement. So I think these are important things to look at. So, and thank you for the super sticker. Welcome to the show. Thank you.
As you said, Erica, we didn't initially come to this because we wanted to learn about the intelligence community. It's really understandable that people don't know much about it, don't understand how it works or what they're doing or what they're interested in. It's understandable if they don't really even care, if they feel like they, being an individual, feels like they have some experiences with some kind of non-human intelligence, or in their life they feel some psychic phenomena is relevant to them. It's really understandable that they're not interested in the scientific process. They don't know how the DIA works. They don't care how the CIA works or what it's done. That's really understandable. And at the same time, if we're going to put ourselves in the positions that we're speaking as somewhat of authority figures or researchers or writers, content creators on the topic of UFOs, paranormal topics, even the psychic phenomena, the remote viewing and the ESP, there is no getting around the influence that the intelligence community has had on this, and the interest it has had, and the opportunities for espionage and counter espionage. And we see them arguing about this report that, well, we're not going to believe them until they this, and we're not going to believe the Pentagon if they don't that. They don't care. They're not doing reports for me or you to believe them. That's not their interest. They are interested in protecting their information security, minimizing what adversaries know about what they know, what their capabilities are, what they can do, and extracting information from their adversaries. They are not the least bit interested if that is uh, pleasing or not to George Knapp, not the least.
Absolutely. And I do think that, again, like I say all the time, I think it is important to understand there are groups with a lot of money behind them and that have a very vested interest in what happens in of the political landscape, and they have they have the tools, they have groups behind them that can spend exorbitant amount of money to create a marketing campaign, to create fake websites, to lead you down rabbit holes. And so I think not only in the UFO conspiracy community, but this is going on all over the board right now. And unfortunately there are influences, a lot of propaganda from foreign adversaries that we see coming into play. And I think this is run rampant in the UFO world, especially the UFO disclosure world. And, we're, the government, and they're keeping things from us, and all of this um, stuff is very, I mean, the timing is quite lovely. Again, like I said, with the election cycle coming up, it's unfortunate. And if you really do care about UAP UFO research, you would be running far and fast from the disclosure movement, from getting into the political arena. All of this stuff we saw very clearly at the congressional hearing that Dave or Grush and all of the Bigelow boys were there with their handlers sitting behind them, and then social media influencers behind them that are promoting this narrative. And I'm glad that there is an effort to shut people down because they have not provided anything of merit. And we should all do that. And we should all focus on other things. If we care about the subject, go get some binoculars, go hang out with some astronomers, get a telescope, learn about the universe, learn about all the cool things NASA's doing. I mean, just look at something positive instead of getting involved in this like complete, this nonsense that will stir up, a very bad sentiment. I think it's dangerous, and I think that we have a responsibility to call it out, and that's what we're trying to do. So that's why I'm proud
And
to work with you.
I'm proud to work with you too, Erica. Thank you. And it's a technique to keep it going, is to make it all personal, to be obtuse about not understanding the way to lay out a systematic series of points that lead to a clear conclusion. It's absolutely just part of the methodology of various less than overt agendas to just keep arguing about personalities and ambiguous things that have no chance of resolution. And I'm just not the least bit interested in that.
Right, absolutely. But I mean, like I said, I'm so glad that we're doing the work that we're doing. I want to thank you, in public for going down some of the roads that I've wanted to go down. And I think that we've uncovered things, and I'm very proud of that. And we're going to continue to do that by doing records requests and by doing our due diligence. And so I just think I'm very proud to be the executive director of Expanding Frontiers, to work with you, to have the listeners that we do for the show. It's an exciting thing for me, and I love it. After all the negativity that I've been through in this subject, this is a real highlight to me, and I look forward to keep on keeping on, and we're gonna do some great things.
Yes, thank you. And that's very rewarding to me, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you, and I really appreciate our supporters too. Let's work together. Let's um, continue our research directions, maybe get some more directions from our Patreons and from other researchers that give us leads or want some help with FOIA requests. And let's keep it going. It's been a fun and rewarding ride. Thank you.
Absolutely. I can't wait. And it's the second I get it done, even though I should like go decompress, I'm going to be, doing all sorts of research because it's fascinating and I love it. And I'm in this for life. So it's a great thing. So thank you, Jack. And I want to just thank all of you again, Tracy, Simon, Jim, Lord Ludacris, Ruden, and Bill, Peter, everybody. Just you guys are the reason that we're here. And it is so cool to have such a supportive crowd here, an intelligent crowd, and people that are willing to stand up for things that promote ethical behavior, promote true research, and we'll hopefully get to the bottom of some questions. Probably not the big question about life on other planets visiting Earth, but at least we're having fun looking at all of this. So thank you very much. You can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out our wonderful blog, to see the current research. And then you can also click there to become a Patreon to help support our nonprofit. And again, thank you so much, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll try to stay out of trouble, but you know me. I say that for 5 minutes and then 10 minutes later, I'm, just the way I roll. So thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, good night.